Alright, welcome everyone. My name is K. Michael Russell. I'm a comic book colorist, and in this video I'm just going to do this Abe Sapien piece for fun. I'm waiting on some pages to arrive for a couple of projects. This was drawn by Stephen Green, a former collaborator of mine. We worked together on the In the Dark anthology, and so yeah, let's see, Hellboy is ending very soon, so we'll do this sort of as a tribute piece. And I'll try to talk you guys through it. You guys seem to really enjoy the last kind of walkthrough where I was talking through everything, and then I get other people asking for more time-lapse stuff. So I'll try to do both here. We'll do one voiceover and one time-lapse. So all right. So I just imported this into Photoshop. Really haven't done anything with it yet. So put my inks on top. Set it to multiply. I'm going to put a flats layer underneath. And I'm thinking since he's kind of a cool character, I mean cool colored character, I'd try for maybe try a warm background, but also thought something kind of monochromatic might look good. So I don't know. I'm going to play around with that. We'll see. We'll go one way or the other here. And I'm not going to do all the flats on this. I'm just going to basically outline him and kind of paint this pretty roughly, since it is just for fun. And I'm just using the lasso tool. I'm holding down, well, I let it go to look, but I'm holding down Alt, which lets me sort of switch between the polygonal version of this tool, where it's line to line, and the freehand version. So I can draw like this, or I can do point to point at the same time. And if you need a full sort of lasso tool primer, there's a pretty good overview of all the different ways you can use the lasso tool to add and subtract selections, and I have a video for that in the channel, so feel free to look that up. And I've said this in many videos before, but you know, I get people all the time that say, "Well, you're really fast, and I'm really slow, and I'm just too slow to do this." And you know, I didn't start out fast. That's something that sort of comes with practice and getting better all the time, getting faster all the time. So don't let that discourage you. We all sort of have to start somewhere. But I'm holding down Shift at the beginning of the selection to add to the selection, so I don't have to trace the whole thing and lose it. And then once I start it with the Shift, I can let go of that and switch to Alt to, like I said, to sort of switch back and forth between the basically point-to-point version, the polygonal version, and the freehand version of the lasso tool. So you don't have to keep switching back and forth. I did get a question recently asking how I was able to move the canvas also while doing this, and again, you can use the space bar to shift things around. It's a bit like, it takes some coordination. It's a bit like, what's the old saying about patting your stomach and rubbing your head, or vice versa at the same time. It's, again, just takes practice. I may end up going back and adjusting these inks a little bit they're not completely, you know, black and white. There's some tones in this, and I don't want to kill the tones either completely. So I kind of want to let that come through and let that work for me. I could, you know, add a little bit more contrast probably without losing too much of that, but we'll wait and see. Some of you guys are probably going to skip this part because you've seen me flat probably quite a few times if you've been around the channel very long. I don't flatten my own sequentials very often, and this is just for fun. When I'm doing actual pages, I have a flatter for that. And if you're not familiar with that, there's a video on flatting also, but they flatters basically separate all the colors out, and so you don't have to do all this that I'm doing right now, which is, I do know some pros that flat themselves. I don't see how they do it. It's tedious and time consuming and boring to me, but it's important. All right, so like I said, I don't really know where I'm headed with this, but I do want to, let's see. I don't know. I'm going to play around for a little while in the background. I like to set my backgrounds first because to me that sort of sets the tone for the whole, kind of the whole thing. And this is just a big soft brush, nothing fancy. I don't want it to be too bright because I want to make sure that I've got room for, you know, the important parts here, you know, his hands and his head to be the brightest thing on the page. So we will try that. I'm also going to try something a little different this time. I don't know if I've talked about this very often. There's something called a clipping mask. So what I did is I've isolated just him on his own layer here. You can create a new layer on top, hold down Alt, and then click between those two layers, and you'll see it creates a little arrow here pointing down, and it really sort of locks you into everything below it. Everything you do above it, let me get this right. Everything on the clipping mask will stay contained within this selection, which is basically his outline, without having to, you know, I can do a selection and, you know, it's still, I basically can't paint outside of him. And a lot of painters use this, so I figure we'll give it a shot. And I'm really not super familiar. I mean, obviously I know the character, but I've got some reference material over here on the other monitor. So basically, these what do you call it? These things on his head are just darker versions of his skin tone, just really dark. And this brush I'm using is now the K&KL brush. That's from Keenan Lafferty's brushes. He's another YouTuber who is he does cool stuff. He works for a lot of the, or works for, I don't know if a lot, I know he works for some of the game companies and card companies and that sort of thing. So he's got a really cool channel. If you don't follow him, check it out. And when I'm done with these things, I always wish usually that I had flatted it properly, but I really don't have time. I don't have time to go and flat all this stuff, so I'm just getting it rough in here. But the brush is pressure sensitive, so the lighter I touch, like this is really light, you can barely see it. The harder I touch, the thicker it gets and the more solid it gets. And again, keeping this pretty rough for now. I can always come back and tighten this up later. And it also, with the opacity not being 100%, it's sort of it lets a little bit of that underneath, you know, blue color come through, and it makes a cool look. I'm not sure about what color I want to do his pants yet. But Steven's work's got so much character and so much texture that you know, I feel like I can trip over this and it's gonna look good. So make me look like I'm a genius here today. I really haven't done anything. And let's see, Abe is really more green than blue. I'm gonna leave that blue as the base color and work with a little bit greener on top. Let's see. I found out today that Bob Ross is going to be on Netflix. I'm really excited about that. Some of you younger guys might not know who Bob Ross is. You may have heard about the Twitch thing they did a while back, but he's a painter. He paints landscapes really quickly, but he's just fun to watch. It's a lot of fun to listen to him, and it's very calming. It's very soothing. End of a long day, pop on the Netflix and listen to some Bob Ross, and you will probably feel better. And his eyes are probably a little wet, so I'm going to use like a harder texture there, you know, make that pop a little bit. His gun is a little too light. I'm going to make a layer on top, fill it with black, and check the values. And I'll toggle this off and on. And again, if you watched me before, then you'll know that it's a good way to sort of make sure that the image is working in black and white, because it really should. I'm going to try to texture this up a little bit. This is I believe, yeah, this is one of Kyle T. Webster's brushes, and I renamed it Dave Stewart because it If you don't know who Dave Stewart is, you should at this point. But he's one of the greatest colorists ever, and I don't know. Some of the brushes that this brush just reminded me of some things that he does in the background. Sometimes he's kind of chalky. I don't know how you describe it. Kind of a chalky, charcoaly sort of. Oh, I missed a spot. This was probably driving someone crazy, right? There we go. What was I saying? Yeah, so anyway, he's a really, really good colorist, and let's see. Go ahead and merge this down. No, I can't merge that down. Make a new layer on top and fix it here. But anyway, I just renamed that brush after him. I'm kind of rambling. I can't talk and think at the same time sometimes. But anyway, why can't I merge that down? I'm not used to using these clipping layers, and this is what I get for trying. Oh well. We'll figure it out. But anyway, this brush just has a really cool little texture to it, so. And again, when you're deciding where to light things, where your lights and shadows are going to go, be sure that you're checking for clues in the artwork. You know, there's let me get on top of this. You got shadows here, you got shadows here, shadows over here, under here. So, you know, my light source is sort of coming in from the front, from this angle. If I can draw this arrow in 3D, you know, like that would be the side of it, and if the arrow had some thickness, it would kind of look like this. That makes sense. So it's kind of coming from the front. You know, I'm not doing all of this randomly here. So everything here has, you know, a purpose. And again, I'm kind of using my Dave Stewart brush. I'm on top of the inks here. What am I doing? Oh, it's late. Let me try that again. There we go. And again, we're going to keep this rough, and we'll start tightening up a little later. I'm still on top of the inks. Sometimes I don't know why Photoshop does this. There we go. I'm in the right layer now. But if you don't have Kyle Webster's brushes, you should definitely consider checking them out, because they're just awesome. They're very natural feeling, and I like them a lot. And I haven't really used natural media, you know, actual traditional traditional painting in a long time. but this is much less messy. And when you're thinking about, again, you're thinking about lights and form, you know, consider, you know, I didn't color every finger the exact same way. The light's coming from this way, it's going to be brighter on this side. It's not going to reach the other fingers, you know, so I didn't do quite as much rendering on the other side of it because the light's not reaching that side. These are all things that you want to keep in mind when you're working. And you know, his chest is not facing the light directly, so I'm not getting quite as bright there. And this is all stuff that, again, sort of comes with practice. With bodies, you know, it's really, you know, hands and heads are what's most important. So that's really what you want to pull the most focus to. And I'm going to assume that he is a little, I'm assuming he's kind of slimy. So I'm going to do some like brighter little spotlights. Specular highlights is the technical term for that. More so than I would on, you know, skin and that sort of thing. You know, really pointed lights there. And again, I'm being very strategic about all of the points, all of these curves. Actually, let me try to explain that here for a second, because I get this question a lot, and it's hard to, if you picture his shoulder as a sphere, you know, when you see a sphere and it's being lit by one side, you know, you're going to get a bright point of light in one part, and then it sort of fades into the rest of it, you know. So I'm really very quickly, but what I'm thinking is, you know, here's a sphere. Why does that keep changing? You know, here's a sphere, kind of got an elongated sphere, another sphere here. You know, this isn't a sphere that's been squashed. So again, I've got the little point on the same place on all of them. So anyway, that's what's going through my head here. I think these are actually these bullet holes, maybe. Is he leaking? Is he bleeding? I just noticed that. What color is Abe Sapien's blood? These are things we need to know. I have my other monitor. This is a long shot. Abe Sapien blood. I don't know. Mike Mignola's gonna fry me if this is not the right color, but I feel like it should be green, but I don't know that. Someone out there let me know what color Abe Sapien's blood is. There's someone watching this that probably knows. And I'm not done with the background yet. I feel like it needs more, but I am working on other stuff now. We'll come back to that. And again, on his feet and all this, you know, I'm not spending as much time on these areas. It's just not that important. I'm actually going to make another clipping mask. I think, let me make sure this is going to work. Yeah, that does. I'm not used to working with these things. And I'm gonna get this brownish color in the background, kind of an orangey color. And I'm gonna set this to multiply on my brush. I don't use multiply very often because it gets things too dark too quickly. And I'm gonna kind of sort of create a gradient from the bottom. And I sometimes even like to put my black and white layer on and use that to sort of gauge how dark it is. Because again, I really just want once you focused up at his head. And I'm going to take some of the opacity out of this. There we go. All right, and let's see. Let me start playing around with this background a little bit. I might come back to the I colored that on my flats, by the way. So I'm making another set of flats at the bottom. We'll just change that to background. There we go. This is another brush. I can't remember where I got it from. It's not really what I'm looking for here, though. I know I want a texture in the background. That's just an add noise brush. I would think that's another one of it's another one of Kyle's brushes. I'm gonna put a levels adjustment layer on top of everything and brighten it up just a little bit. You can grab the little arrow on the far right in the levels window and pull it in to brighten it up. And then I'm going to fill that whole mask on that layer with black to take it away. And then I can paint with white on the mask to create a kind of a bright spot where I want it, which is kind of right in the middle. I'm not completely sold on this background color. I wonder if it wouldn't work better if it was a little cooler. That green's pretty awesome. Alright, so now I'm going to get on top of the inks and all of the, well, let me make a new layer on top of the inks, fill it with black, and this is going to be my special effects layer. I'm going to set the layer mode to screen. I'll call that SFX so you guys can follow along. Screen works well when there's something there for it to affect. It works better than if there was nothing on the layer. I don't really know a better way to explain that. Someone else asked me that in a comment recently, and it just works better when you use black. There's a lot of things Photoshop does that I don't really know why it works, but I've figured out that it works, or I learned from somewhere that it works, and I might tone some of this down, but I'm kind of, again, I'm thinking he's sort of wet and the air's humid, and so having him kind of glisten a little bit, and I am going to turn that down a little, just on the opacity there. And I still don't know if I like the background. I mean, I feel like almost anything works on this, because it's so good to begin with. I mean, not my colors, the artwork is just awesome. I've got an action that I use to create the holds. It's really complicated. It's like 10 steps, but I don't even remember all the steps, but it involves channels, and I was going to see what it looks like with something other than black, but it loses too much contrast, so not going to worry about it. Alright, this is getting pretty close to being done. As for just a fun piece, it's I guess turned out okay. Let's see here. Sometimes I'll sort of dabble around with gradient maps or something just to make it, again, just to sort of goof around with it. The way gradient maps work is, I've got a video on it I think, but they basically map all of the darkest parts of an image to one side of the gradient and the lightest parts to the other side. And yeah, so, but you can set the mode to color, and it sort of treats it like a it's kind of like an Instagram filter. You guys are familiar with those, I'm sure. And it can kind of tie things together a little bit, but it can kill a little bit of your contrast. You kind of have to bump it back up sometimes. And you can get it to just impact certain areas, again, with using a mask to paint it back out. So here it's basically just impacting him, but not the background. Takes a little bit of that harshness out of the blue. He looks a little too blue to me though. Just a little bit. So I'm just gonna get his skin here. And again, I would normally just grab this with the flats, but I didn't flat this completely. I can do this with an adjustment layer, or I can just change it, but I'm going to try to do it with an adjustment layer on top. And just shift that a little bit toward the green. I'm just going a little darker around the bottom. And I feel like he did some of this sort of swoopy lines in the background that I should do something with here. I turned off all of the layers on top of this to play with this for a second. This is what colors are actually underneath all of these layers. When I turn them all back on, it should. You can see it's affecting those the way it's supposed to. I still feel like the background's too smooth. I've got some textures I'm gonna drop in here, or a texture. Let's see. Maybe something like that. Let's see. Rasterize. I'm just blurring this background. I don't really want all of that coming through that strongly. And I'm going to set the mode of that texture to overlay. Or Let's see, soft light, hard light. I'm just playing around with different textures here. I mean different modes on that color layer. I don't know, I'm not crazy about that. Let's see. This is the experimental stage. There we go. That works. I'm just painting over his foot here. I want that to blend in a little bit more. It's drawing a little too much attention. Alright, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and call this. I really didn't do anything with his fins, though. I need to fix that. Let's see. And I'm getting under all of these adjustment layers, and I'll turn it back on once I'm done here. Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you've got questions, feel free to use the comments there. If you like this sort of thing, subscribe to the channel. If you want more tutorials, a lot more, I have a coloring course. It's about 10 hours of this stuff, and there's a link in the description. So thank you for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay tuned. I'll also upload a speed version of this for those of you that don't have any attention span. All right, see you guys in the next one. Peace.